Well, howdy, folks, and welcome back to my channel. This episode is going to be about advanced technology in the Bible. Here's my disclaimers, of course. The Bible that I'm using here is from about 1903. That's the best I can guess because it doesn't have a proper date on it and it doesn't have a proper table of contents. But when I've looked up this old Holman Bible, the only ones I can find that look identical are from like 1903. So it's a King James version, but I also go by different translations as well, depending on what's worded the way I think is the most appropriate for our modern day language. Now, I am a shaman, but I absolutely love the Bible. I find it fascinating. It's like a riddle book and a code book. So, whether you're Christian or not, I bet you'll find this interesting. Before I get into the technology, I need to explain about dark sayings and parables and how the Bible is a riddle book or a code book. So I'm going to give you a few examples of that, and then I'll go into the different passages about technology. In Galatians 4:22 through 24, we have, "For it is written that Abraham had two sons, the one by a bondmaid, the other by a free woman. But he who was of the bondwoman was born after the flesh, but he of the free woman was by promise, which things are an allegory." Okay? Look this up in your own Bible, but what it is telling you is that these stories are allegory. They are figures of speech. They are metaphors. They are parables. And one of my beefs with the church is that they take a lot of these things literally when they shouldn't be. And then the literal things that give out profound truth in the Bible, they tend to ignore completely. Proverbs 1:5 and 6. "A wise man will hear and will increase learning, and a man of understanding shall attain unto wise counsels." To understand a proverb and the interpretation, the words of the wise and their dark sayings. That's another word for metaphor or allegory or parable, is dark sayings. And a good example in our modern English would be like stick in the mud. Is somebody an actual stick that's in the mud? No. We know that that means that somebody's like a party pooper or somebody's like a downer. And that's what that means. So these are dark sayings. That's a symbolic reference. A stick in the mud is a symbolic reference. A couple more. Psalm 78:2. And I'm going to read you two different versions because I like how they're both translated. "I will open my mouth with a parable. I will utter hidden things, things from of old." And the King James Version, "I will open my mouth in a parable. I will utter dark sayings of old." So these hidden things, these dark sayings, these are the parables. And some examples from something that's not in the Bible would be like the prophecies of the Hopi. Like one of their signs is that the land will be crossed by snakes of iron. Well, railroad tracks could be considered snakes of iron. "The land shall be crisscrossed by a giant spider's web." Well, telephone lines would definitely look like a spider's web. "The land shall be crisscrossed with rivers of stone that make pictures in the sun." That could be considered roads, and the pictures in the sun could be considered mirages. Another thing I heard is that they said that there would be like iron beetles moving on these rivers of stone. That would describe cars pretty well. And then another one is "a dwelling place in the heavens or above the earth that shall fall with a great crash." Well, that sounds like a space station to me. So these things are metaphors, they're parables, they're riddles. Okay, so let's get into the technology. This is a pretty famous passage. "The thing that hath been, it is that which shall be, and that which is done is which shall be done, and there is no new thing under the sun." Is there anything whereof it may be said, See, this is new? It hath been already of old time, which was before us. There is no remembrance of former things, neither shall there be any remembrance of things that are to come with those that shall come after. Basically, we have had multiple resets. And when the resets happen, our knowledge of technology is wiped out. What this is saying basically is that technology is not new. It's only been wiped out from common knowledge of mankind. And this has happened multiple times. The more you look at history and the more you look at archaeology, the more you will see proof all over that not only were they technologically advanced, but they were more advanced than we are now. In my opinion, and I've been in tech for almost 20 years, I worked in technology. I believe that we've actually devolved technologically. I could definitely say that they had better technology, higher technology, and it was better for the environment that we have now, and they were more advanced. But the last time we had a reset was probably in about the 1800s, and all of this knowledge was wiped out. So when I mention parables and riddles and things like that, you've got to understand that people, when they wrote these books, were not allowed to know about technology. They didn't have the words to describe it. So they had to use parables, and they had to use dark sayings and hidden sayings. This is a footnote in my Bible from this passage, and I'm going to read this to you guys real quick. There is nothing new in nature, in moral principles, in sciences, or in arts. New discoveries are but the adoption of principles already in full operation in nature, or the revival of things forgotten. New combinations and applications, however, of old principles there may be, and this is the utmost novelty that human ingenuity may claim. We still don't understand the technology of nature. And before this last reset that we had in the 1800s that almost wiped out humanity, the technology was based on nature and copied technology found in creation and found in nature. And we still, in our modern era, can't hold a candle to what they've done in ancient times. In biblical times, when these books were written, they didn't have the words for technology. They didn't understand technology. It was considered witchcraft or sorcery or pharmakia. Technology would be considered like magic to them. And there's that saying that says that any high technology would be considered or seen as magic to those who didn't understand it. Well, that's exactly what we're dealing with here. So you have to look at the Bible and look at ancient times with different eyes to see and understand that they had ancient technology. And there is proof of this everywhere. All you have to do is look for it. So let's start in Genesis. One big proof that genetic engineering existed is completely overlooked by most people, and especially the church. Most Christian churches should be completely against GMO and any kind of genetic modification because that is corrupt. That is an abomination. And how do we know that existed? Well, why would after its kind be repeated so many times in Genesis? Why? The only explanation would be if there were things that were not after their kind in existence. And if you think that's not good enough proof, well, there's a book that is mentioned twice in the Bible that was removed from the Bible that used to be part of the canon. It's mentioned in Joshua 10:13 and in 2 Samuel 1:18. It's called the Book of Yasher. And let me read this passage to you. And their judges and rulers went to the daughters of men and took their wives by force from their husbands according to their choice. And the sons of men in those days took from the cattle of the earth the beasts of the field, and the fowls of the air, and taught the mixture of animals of one species with the other, in order therewith to provoke the Lord. And God saw the whole earth, and it was corrupt, for all flesh had corrupted its ways upon earth, all men and all animals. 2 Chronicles 26:15. And he made in Jerusalem engines, invented by cunning men, to be on the towers and up upon the bulwarks, to shoot arrows and great stones withal. So, right there, it flat out says they made engines. But they tried to tell us engines are something new. Engines are not new. There's nothing new under the sun. Isaiah 13:5. They come from a far country, from the end of heaven, even the Lord, and the weapons of his indignation, to destroy the whole land. How can something come from the end of heaven unless there was flight? Unless they had flying machines. This one is really interesting. The chariots shall rage in the streets. They shall jostle one against another in the broad ways. They shall seem like torches. They shall run like the lightnings. Well, that sounds a whole lot like cars, doesn't it? And I think that is a reference to cars. But they didn't have a word for that. They weren't allowed to know about technology, so they didn't have the language for it. So instead of saying a car, they would call it a chariot or a horseless chariot. Here's another one, Zechariah 5:2, a flying scroll. Isn't that interesting? That reminds me of what people describe as a Pleiadian or cigar-shaped flying craft or UFOs that they see. But yes, flight existed. Nothing new under the sun. Technology is not new. The knowledge of it has been kept from mankind. Another one in Zechariah 9:14. His arrow shall go forth as the lightning. That kind of sounds like energy weapons to me. And there's a couple of these passages that'll have the word lightning in it. They didn't have a word for electricity. So anything like that would be considered like lightning or a pillar of light, things like that, because they don't have the words for it. They had to use metaphors and dark sayings. Job is an interesting book, and this description in here sure sounds like some kind of machine or craft to me. It says, I will not fail to speak of Leviathan's limbs, its strength and its graceful form. Who can strip off its outer coat? Who can penetrate its double coat of armor? Another translation would say double coat of mail, like chain mail, which means metal. Who dares open the doors of its mouth, ringed about with fearsome teeth? And his scales are his pride, shut up together as with a close seal. One is so near to another that no air can come between them. They are joined one to another, they stick together, they cannot be sundered. A light doth shine, and his eyes are like the eyelids of the morning. Out of his mouth go burning lamps, and sparks of fire leap out. That sounds like headlights to me. Headlights or spotlights or lamps of some sort. And a flame goeth out of his mouth. A flamethrower. That sounds like it could be a flamethrower or some kind of weapon. And again, Leviathan, the word Leviathan could mean something like a dinosaur, or it could mean something that has the shape of a dinosaur, which is really, really large. So this thing could be the size of a dinosaur. And he maketh the path to shine after him. Again, this all sounds like technology to me. I don't know. Tell me what you think. Job 38:35. Canst thou send lightnings, that they may go and say unto thee, Here we are? This one I really, really like, because I think this could be describing either telephones, radio, any kind of wireless communication, walkie talkies, things like that. Again, they didn't have the word for electricity, they didn't have the word for frequencies. Canst thou send lightnings, that they may go and say unto thee, here we are? Can you talk through lightning? Isn't that interesting? Jonah. Jonah's got a few examples of different technology. And again, the Bible was written from the perspective of people who did not have the language for technology. So they thought everything was supernatural. The Lord obviously had weather modification and weather control technology, because the Lord told Jonah, I want you to go and do this. And Jonah says, no. And he takes off on a ship. And the Lord decided to cause a mighty tempest in the sea so that the ship was like to be broken. So instead of just, abducting the dude off the ship, he sent a huge storm and scared everybody on the ship to death, and the whole crew didn't know what's going on. And then, now the Lord had prepared a great fish to swallow up Jonah, and Jonah was in the belly of the fish for 3 days and 3 nights. Could somebody really survive in the belly of a giant fish for 3 days and 3 nights? No. This is a submarine, folks. They didn't have the word for submarine, so of course they're going to call it a fish. And then apparently there was communication, some kind of radio communication or intercom or microphones or whatever, because out of the belly of hell cried I, and thou heardest my voice. So the Lord could hear this guy from within this submersible vehicle. And one thing I should mention is there are certain passages in the Bible that condemn divination, but there are many, many references to people casting lots. Casting lots is to divine the will of God. So, how can it be wrong when they're doing it all over the place? So, the crew of this ship casted lots to figure out what was going on. Why is this storm falling upon us, and who's to blame for it? So, they cast lots to figure out who was to blame. And the lots told them this is Jonah's fault. Isn't that interesting? Revelation 4:6. And before the throne there was a sea of glass like unto crystal. I don't know. To me, this sounds like a monitor or a computer screen or a television screen of some sort. And there's another reference similar to this. In Revelations 15:2, there was a sea of glass mingled with fire. Could this be some kind of screen, some kind of technological display? I don't know. I think it might. Revelation 9:9. And the shapes of the locusts were like unto horses prepared unto battle. What do they do to prepare horses for battle? They cover the horses with armor. So they're coated in metal, basically. They're covered in metal. And on their heads were as it were crowns like gold, and their faces were as the faces of men. And they had their hair as the hair of women, and their teeth were like the teeth of lions. And they had breastplates, as it were the breastplates of iron. And the sound of their wings was as the sound of chariots of many horses running into battle. Well, again, they weren't allowed the language of technology. They didn't know about technology. So the sound of many chariots of horses rushing into battle, that to me would sound like an engine. This seems like it's describing some kind of mechanical vehicles. Again. And we have a couple references to iron pens. An iron pen and lead in the rock from Job 19:24. And then Jeremiah 17:1, a pen of iron with the point of a diamond. So it sounds like they had some fancy pens, kind of like our cross pens now. In Job 37:18 through 21, there's a couple weird references. Hast thou with him spread out the sky, which is strong, and as a molten looking glass? What does that mean? How can you spread out the sky if we're on a spinning ball? And now men see not the bright light which is in the clouds. How can there be a light in the clouds? Unless there's maybe a craft of some sort with a light? I don't know. Weird. Okay, I hope I gave you guys some food for thought. And don't forget, hit like, share, and subscribe. Leave a comment below and tell me what you think. If you'd like to support my work, shoot me an email. The address is right there. You guys take care. Namaste. Y'all come back now, you hear? Bye.